Hello there, welcome to more live Haskell streaming. I'm going to spend tonight hopefully building out more of the data modeling side of the application I'm building. So it's supposed to be like a simple payment application. I haven't gotten very far with that. So far I have one database table, I guess, storing ledger entries, which are just money paid in or money paid out. And then the rest of the time I spent building an application around it, or starting to build an application around it. So looking at things like effectful for effects and looking at Haskell for talking to the database. I've got one thing left to do on moving to Haskell. I'm going to look at changing the migrations over from postgresql-simple to using Haskell. And then after that, I want to look at setting up more of the data modeling side of things. So I want to create an account. An account is something that owns ledger entries, basically. So when you deposit money, you're depositing to a particular account. So I'll create accounts, and I'll create relationships between ledger entries and accounts. So that's the plan for today. I'm going to start though with the migration stuff. So this is the simple migrate function, or simple migrate program. So it's got init, which will initialize the database. What does initialize actually do, thinking about it? Migrate. Oh, I see. This is used by PostgreSQL Simple, so it creates the migrations table, basically. Migrate itself will look in PostgreSQL migrations, and it will run all of those migrations, and the migrations themselves, like this, are just simple pieces of SQL. And then we've got seed, which does a similar thing. Again, these are just simple bits of SQL in a directory system called seed, but it will do insert some standard data for me. Okay, so the plan is to change this to use Haskell migrations rather than PostgreSQL migration. And I'm hoping that's going to be quite straightforward. I'm hoping it's just a drop-in replacement, but we'll find out. Okay, so just check that. Okay, Haskell is set for the library, but not for anything else. So I'm going to set it up for here. And I'll also add Haskell migration. And that's got a version, which I'll go and look up now. If I can find a window. Here is a window. So 031. It's going to be 031. And hopefully I can get rid of these. I'm just going to get rid of them. See what happens. I know it's going to happen. It won't work. But I'm hoping at least that the language server will start. Going to be a slight delay because I'll have to install Haskell migration, but it can do that in the background. And then I'm guessing I'll want to import. Well, I have them in the library, I think, which does connections for me. So I'm hoping I can load the config and then acquire the connection using this file. I guess it's loaded because these don't exist anymore, so let's just get rid of them. So here, when we had connect PostgreSQL, we're not going to do anymore. So hoping that if I import that, I need to find out if there are equivalents with these types. But it does give me back a migration result. No, because it's defined in PostgreSQL Simple. Okay, I want to change the error message. So let me just comment these out. This is what I want. This is not what I want. It's quite annoying. Oops. Let's get rid of these and these lines, and then stop the compiler from complaining. I wanted to complain about the correct thing. Okay, now we're getting to the right errors. So, run migration is not in scope, but I can import it. Okay, that's a good start. It takes, if I scroll down a bit, run migration takes a migration command and then returns a transaction. Okay, so the API to this is slightly different. So I'm going to have to go and look and see what it actually does. Let's get to README. Do we have an example? We have no example here. Okay, can we find it on Google? Because there's no documentation here either, it seems. A little bit surprising. Do you know what we could do? Just go and read the source, perhaps. So, how to do? Good stuff. What have we got in here? So we got inside migration. We got run migration. Returns migration success is provide a migration command executes without error. And as a command, I can pass in migration initialization. But where does it get a connection from? Or do I need to run the transaction it gives back? Okay, so this says it gives me a transaction. So hang on. Okay, so you get a transaction back, and what is a transaction? It's a Haskell transaction. It's one of these, apparently. Okay, which, whoops, I probably want to jump to this instead. Transaction monad. Okay, multiple queries on the specified mode and isolation level, which is fine, but where do I feed in the connection? Seems a bit strange. What can I do with a transaction? Because it showed me how to create them, but not how to run them. It's not in scope because I haven't imported Haskell transaction. This thing I thought was going to be really quick is turning out to be a little bit more complicated than I thought. Oops. And what version is this? 1112. Okay, so what does it do with the transaction? Does it actually have anything which runs the migration? Not there. Any tests? Nope, we have some test SQL, but not some actual tests. Oh, I'll try looking at the test. Okay. In here, migration test. So it loads the migrations. Run tx. What is that? Where does it come from? Run tx. Uses run, which comes from somewhere. Can it find run for me? Oh, it's up here, sorry, from Haskell session. Right, so in theory then, in here, I don't even know if I want to import this now. So this is transaction. And then we say run tx. And that comes from Haskell session. And run takes a session and a connection. So a connection might be the second argument to this. Session is maybe, don't want to go from a transaction to a session. And this does run under IO. So this now takes connection, which is there, it's fine. A transaction of A, which they call the act here. It's not, it doesn't seem like a super simple way to run a migration. So, can I go from a session to, no, from a transaction to a session? Transaction to a session. I can with unsafe course. Okay. What's in here? What's B here? Haskell session qualifies as B. So there's also a run. Is that documented? Did I just miss it? No, I just can't see it in there. Strange. So run will take a transaction and an isolation level and the mode and the bool and then return a session. Okay, and I guess that's what's happening in the test. In here. Although it says takes transaction, not takes.run, and doesn't have a bool. Let me just try copying this. Oh, there's also transaction sessions. Right. So that's what they are calling. This transaction they were using. Okay, so the isolation level, I think I'm going to want, it doesn't matter because there's one thing inside it, but I'll copy what they have in the test, which was read committed, and then the mode will be right. Okay, it makes some sense now, I think. And then that should turn into session. So tx.transaction. We have our transaction. We have transaction goes at the end. So it's tx.read committed, tx.write, and the transaction itself. So I don't care about discarding it. Was return either a query error or an A. Okay, migration error is not the right thing, so we get query error, which I need to find. Query error, okay. So it can either be a query error. Oh wait, sorry, what's type of result? It's either session error or any. Right, okay. So if it's left and then some error, and if it's right, and we don't care what it is, we print it out. Okay, now run migration wants to run under transaction, and I'm running it under IO. Now I can't run this because run wants to run under IO. So can we just lift IO up? Can we lift out the whole lot? Yes, we can. Yes, a bit ugly though. Oh, it still doesn't work. So run migration returns maybe a migration error. Do I not need this then? It's all nonsense. I just need this to be the result. In case result of, and then if it's nothing, that was success. So that's going to be nothing. a bit strange. And if it's just an error, I just need that to be just. And I can lift layer with that. And lift layer with that. But have we actually run it? And how can we run it without using a connection? Does run migration actually run migrations? Because you think it would do, based on the name. But given that I'm not giving it a connection, it seems very strange. So migration command is just one of these things. Transaction we've just looked at. And it might return a migration error. What happens in here? Run migration, if it's initialization, then we initialize schema. But initialize schema is, it's calling SQL. I remember seeing here, which goes from a byte string to transaction. But at no point does that actually run. Where is SQL? So when I run tx, they're calling run migration with migration initialization. Okay, so they take a connection, they take the result of this, and they call run. So, I mean, that seems similar, but their run migration, it's not in line, is it? No. Run migration, I'm guessing, comes from here. But when I call run migration, it gives me a maybe back. Not surprising. Go back to where it was. This arrow I need to show it, but this thing, it's not a transaction, it's a maybe. I'll just copy and paste this code for a second. So here I want to import that, and I want to import query error from Oh. Where's query error come from? Probably from connection. Nope. Session. Nope. Oh, that's very confusing. Oh, it says here it comes from session. Why can I not import it? In the import, I'm called query error is exported, but it's a data constructor session error. That's not good because that's let me just come back to that. So it couldn't match type E with session error. It is a session error. Okay, and then problem here is it tx.transaction is not in scope because I imported with a capital X. That's not what I meant to do. Okay, so we now have this. So now can I say run tx? Do they have an example? Run tx, the connection, then run migration and migration initialization. Exactly what I've written out. Variable not in scope. Run tx. Connection to transaction. Maybe use run tx. Capitalization again. Okay. So the result is that, but it's not. Okay. So now I just need to go back to being IO. Ditch that. Right, okay, I think I see what's happening. So what I was doing before is I was evaluating run migration under the transaction monad, but I don't want to do that. I just want to run it. But then this helper is probably quite useful for that. Okay, so now we can say case result of, and then if we have an error, it will show it, and if we don't, then we'll do that. Okay, so that seems to be the pattern. So we need this help. We don't need the helper, but the helper is useful because this is a little bit long. Okay, so for the migrations directory, there were some other helpers for this. Where were they? Load migrations from directory. So maybe we could say let migrations equal load migrations from directory. Thanks. Migrations we probably want to actually execute that. So we have some migrations now. Okay, and then do we want to run them in separate transactions? So do I just call run migration all of them? This could be like migration files. Is that, and then migrations. And then can we just say run migration? Over, these are commands at this point. Migration files. Map that over, okay. And then we want to say run tx. So can I say something like, oh no, hang on, for each one do I want to run it and get the error and print it out? Or can I run them all and get one error back? I suspect not. Okay, so we call run tx with the migrations. It needs a connection and migrations. Okay, and that's going to give us back a result. But what I think I really want to do is say let results equal to mapm of run txcon over migrations, and then this should be a list of, not quite, okay, this should now be a list of either session errors or nothing's is think. So then I can say if any I have a list of ethers, I'm going to find out if any of these ethers is left. So if any hang on, what's the type of any? If we have any, then what's the type of any? Why does that jump down? Any. So we need a function and then a list. So the function is going to be is left, and the list is going to be this. It should give me back a boolean. So if that, then put string failed to run migrations. Need to work out how we get the error back. Else puts within all migrations run. I'll import that. Okay. This right. Okay, so we get our files. We call run migration on them. We turn it into a list of results. We don't actually want to know whether or not any of them are left. It's rather that if there are lefts, we want to get them and print out the errors. So we can say case filter is left on that. So if we get back an empty string, then we're good. For a second, so filter will give me back a list of A's. So if we get no errors back, then we're good. And this is if we get some errors, and we print out, oops, failed to run migrations, followed by, and then what we want to do is maybe something like unlines errors. Not quite. Unlines of show mapped over errors. Something like that. It's not quite right, but it's, I guess if I get it working, I can come back and tidy that up a little bit. So this is going to be the same. So I'm going to pull this out into a helper. So we can say something like migrate files. It's going to take a file path and a connection. That's what goes around. So it takes a connection file path. We're going to load from the directory and we'll give it a path. Okay, and it's going to return IO of don't want an either, yeah. I think I do. So it's either going to be a list of session errors or something. And session error, or maybe a migration error. It's not going to be that. Sorry, it's going to be a list of either session error or maybe migration error. Okay, so then I can say result is migrate files using a connection from migrations. And then this one, you can say result is migrate files, and this is going to be seed. And then the message here is different. So all seed data created, and then failed to create seed data. Something like that. God, that's a lot of work. Okay, we're no longer saying connect PostgreSQL, but we can do something like connection I've got what I did. This connection has got connection. db.connection and give it the config. Okay, so connection can fail. So we have left error. Then we want to just error, show error. And if we have right error, actually I might make this more helpful. So connecting to database, and we have right and a connection. We do something like con equal that, and we will say con result. And this will just be C. No. What's different here? Unexpected do block and function application. Something kind of very strange. Do that for a second. So now we're okay here, but we're not okay here. Okay, so let con equal case con result of left error. Error connecting to database, and we'll show the error. Don't understand why that's gone so horribly wrong. Yes, I do. It's that indentation. Right. I see now. This has to be indented beyond the beginning of the identifier following let. Okay. apparently. Okay, so we now have one error left. In some code I have not changed today. That's very strange. It seems to be the same as this. Does it build? Yes, so it's, yeah, there's P getting confused. Not sure why. Okay, so we should be able to say cabal run migrate with no arguments. It gives me the wrong usage line. So that's init migrate or seed. But if I say init, I don't know what it's going to do. It says it's initialized. Migrate and seed says it's done. What have we got on here? Can we just say drop table ledger entries and drop table schema migrations, and then try again. So we'll initialize, we will migrate. So let's see if that created everything. Look at ledger entries. Okay, it looks like I did the right thing. Now if I seed it and just say cabal run me. No, not quite that. No. Open the browser. I think it was already open. Okay, so it does load. It does run the migrations now. Okay, so we no longer have PostgreSQL simple, but that was more complicated than I expected. So this interface is not quite as nice, but maybe that's fine. Can I tidy this up a little bit? So what I really want to do is either give back a session error or give back nothing. And there's no meaningful return here. What happens when you get an error? So if I bring up a new shell and then run the migration, let's run migrate again. This should fail. I haven't loaded environment variables here. This fails too early. Okay. So you can say this is equal to the wrong password. Cabal run migrate. Connecting database. Okay, it's not quite the error I want, but it is an error. So the error is just something. And that's in the connection part. That's really early on. So it's going to be left of just error would be that. Left of nothing makes no sense. Types are a bit wonky. The connection result gives you back either a connection error or a connection. But a connection error what does that look like? This is my type. That's their type. Okay. So connection error from Haskell may be a byte string. Possible details of the connection acquisition error. So you can get connection error of nothing. Seems a little bit strange to me. It gets returned. It doesn't say anywhere. Okay. So it's not really my fault. I don't think. This is just what would that say? Migrate, connecting to database, and it's just say connection to server or whatever. And we shouldn't have to show it anymore. Except we kind of do because it's a byte string, so it should be like unpack. Wrong unpack. It's going to be that. Okay, and if you get a left of nothing, that's going to be error. Connecting to database, no error provided. Something awkward like that, no details provided. Otherwise you get the connection. That's really awkward. And in here, so we're going to try and fail to run the migrations. So I'll put an error in one of the migrations. In fact, we can do this. So 002 create accounts.sql. You can say create table accounts. And we can have an ID with UID. We can just copy some of this, can we? Not really. We'll give it a name, which can be a varchar. Oh, we probably want like a created that as well. Let's created that. Anything else? that should be good enough. But we can say nonsense, which is an in flub. So that should fail now. So I go back to here and run migrate again. Should get a bit further. Oh no, that's just me fixing a connection error. So connection, migrate connecting to database, connection to server at localhost, blah, 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 failed. Okay, it eventually tells me the error. So now I can fix this so it's correct. Okay, so this is the error I'm getting back. It's not amazing. Failed to run migrations left, blah. Nothing, just 1, 2, 2. That's really quite unpleasant. So here is either a session error, maybe a migration error. That seems. So it looks like you can have left error or right nothing to that case, or right. We don't get a session error, but we get a migration error. Crystalline failed to initialize, which I'm not quite sure which one would fail. It's this one that I wanted to look at, but res is the same thing, right? It's a list of either session errors or maybe migration errors. So everything is left. If anything is left, sorry, you're going to get this back. And this is where we should be getting to. Failed to run migrations, left. Failed to run migrations. Give a list of lines. So maybe I want to join them, intercalate. What are the errors? Errors are, I don't believe that's true. So this error is either a session error Oh, I see. These are all left of maybe migration error. I'm so confused by what we get back here. So errors is a list still, I think. Errors here. It's a list of either session error, maybe migration error. So these are all the things where it is left session error, I think. because we're running filter on result, and result is a list, it's the same list, okay. So we have a bunch of session errors. And what was the type of session error? Which is either a query error, well, this show goes back. Oh, it's just arrived, okay. Display exception. Okay. So can we say display exception mapped over that? I need to bracket that up. Match list of characters with characters. Okay, so now we can unline that. No. Oh wait. Okay. These are all still eithers. So we want oh, this is horrible. So we want to say a list of either A or B, and we want to go to list of A's, to lefts. We're not going to filter as left, we're going to say lefts. How's that? And now the errors are just session errors. Okay, cool. I don't need this anymore. Well, I'm still using it in the code below. In here. Okay, but for migration, let's see what we're left with now. Failed to run migrations. I could throw a new line in there, it might kind of work. That looks all right. It looks usable in some way. Okay, and I can do the same thing here. So filter its feed data and it's unlined of display exception. Let's take a colon in. Okay, so for the seed, I can put some nonsense into here. Throw it into, that should be enough to break it. And get rid of that. Go back here, if I now run migrate again, to get a slightly clearer error message. Yeah, I'm not sure what the query error exclamation mark, but it's a thing anyway. At least it gives me the query and then it tells me where the error is. I run it for seed. It says all seed data created. interesting. Still says it. I don't think it will have run. So we run all the things in seed. If we don't have any left, then we should be fine. Otherwise, we show what's going on. I don't know why this wouldn't fail. Nonsense. Values impossible. I would expect that to fail, but it says it's fine. That's unexpected. I can say put strlen of show result somehow, and so I use print. And try running that. Right, just script change that. Doesn't seem to be happy. Oh, is it because it thinks it's run it already? Maybe. Oops. If we say select star from there, we have an entry for ledger entries. So delete from schema migrations where file name is equal to ledger entries to SQL. Okay, so now will it rerun the seed? There we go. Okay, cool. So this does work, it just wasn't rerunning it because it thought it had run it already. Okay. So migrations work, the error message is okay. That took me much longer than I expected. Yeah, I'm finding some of these maybe either a little bit confusing, and generally this interface is not as nice as postgresql-simples. But anyway, it's working now. I've run over time, so I'll call it a day at this point. Yeah, so next week I'll come back and actually fix this migration, remove the nonsense, start working on that, and then link ledger entries back to accounts so that we can insert, or so we can create some data where stuff is linked together. So yeah, that'll be the plan for next week. Sorry this took me longer than expected, but that's always the case, isn't it? Thanks for watching along, and hopefully see you next time. Goodbye.